was just that 65 times in 40 years. And every time you say that, it really does sort of pull you up about, the conditions in which we live, the effect it has on us, and the effect it continues to have on us. And the other one, so I'm going to flip it around now, is that you and I talk about age. I'm 64, you're 62. I don't even know the author.
And me, I'm a kid.
You were a kid at 50 something. He's still in his fives. And
It'll go quick, you know.
It's true.
We're always talking about, people always talk about funerals and etc. And then, you think to yourself, when we talk about funeral, it should be people in their 80s. But
it's coming younger.
Hey, there's so many people we know. You have to ask her, what was his age or her age? And they go 62, 63, those sorts of ages
it's
there.
Coming down.
Yeah, and and then that's frightening.
It is.
Yeah, very frightening there. But are we running?
No, we're running, man.
We're running.
We're always running. I thought that was like the preamble, like the introduction to the podcast.
I couldn't do the introduction properly.
No. It's like you were on a on a roll. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. It was so well articulated, and I'm thinking, he's going to bring it home eventually.
No, when I get on one of those sorts of like streams of consciousness, but what I will do though is to welcome Mike Lawrence.
Yes.
We're really pleased to have you here on Trimston Talks. Trimston Talks is an opportunity for Lungani and myself to talk to people we know, and we've been very fortunate over the last year to have spoken to lots of people about themselves, about their lives, and particularly how mental health has been a feature of their lives in terms of how we maintain our good mental health, and also how do we build resilience for those times when they're not as well, they're not going as well as we'd like to go. And you're a mental health practitioner, and we thought it'd be great to actually have you on with us today.
Because the first time I saw you literally was at SACMA, but I've been I'm a good friend of your brother, Paul, and I've known Paul for close to over 20 years. So, So I was like, when I saw you at SACMA, kind of teaching, when you gave us an introduction on sort of like kind of, that mental health, kind of sort of like the mental health first aid, sort of you alluded to that.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I've been missing something. I should have invited myself over for dinner.
Right, can I ask you then?
Picking
up on what Lungani just said there about he knows your brother.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about, your background in terms of you're a Sheffield man, families of Jamaican origin, etc. Just tell us a little bit about that, because when you and I have talked, like a lot of us there, we often go back to that. We're referencing, back in the day and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you both for inviting me along. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy coming back into the community and sharing my experiences, my knowledge and wisdom, because it's not easy out there. And, in order to get to where you want to go anywhere in life, you've got to work hard at it, because there are some challenges and hurdles to come across which can impact significantly your mental health. But as you alluded to, I was born and raised in Sheffield, Hunter's Bar, which is quite
the affluent side of
It's
Sheffield.
different now. It's different.
I've met a few guys who Hunter's Bar, because were you at school then with Errol?
We started off I knew him from Hunter's Bar Junior School, and then from the middle school, and then from there it was High Stores. Yeah. Whereas if you're another school in the area, you'd have gone to Silverdale.
Oh, right. So was he a dress man then?
As much as possible. Little shorts.
Yes, as you could do with your little jacket, your tie.
Yeah. But there's a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
And then going to school was kind of like interesting. And but one of the things that didn't appear, it didn't occur to me at the time is that there was a lot of racism. And I remember the first day when somebody said the N-word to me, I remember going back home, and I was speaking to my mum, and she said to me, "Don't worry about it. You know, you just put your head down, as they all say, get your head down, and study hard, because whatever you do, whatever you know, they might be able to, you know, to say these names towards you, but they're not going to be able to take what you've learnt, you know, in your head." And that stayed, you know, that stayed through me. And then, as we mentioned, we're talking about downstairs, you know, then I went into leisure and recreation, you know, at Stannington, which I believe isn't here anymore. And then I ended up going down to Butlins.
First of all, just take the leisure and rec, City and Guilds, and then the Butlins, because these were not necessarily pathways which, when we were growing up, people would look to.
Indeed. Yeah. Neither did I, because if I go back to school at High Stores, you know, you got a vision, or you got an idea. No, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. And I remember going to the careers officer and saying, you know, I want to be, I don't know, I can't even remember back in then, but they will say, no, you won't be able to do that, or can't you do that? And so I didn't know, because I didn't really have a great deal of direction.
So in a sense, you're getting told you can't do these things. But on the other side, I don't know about you, I knew I also didn't want to do what my dad did. So my dad worked in a foundry. And I remember going to his workplace to get some money, get his wages one day, because he'd been unwell. And I remember having to go in, and when I got in, the heat nearly lifted me off the ground. The noise nearly lifted me off the ground. And I thought, I can't do that either. So I can't do what the things I'd like to do, they're telling me I can't do, and the things which my dad did do for 30 odd 40 years there, I can't do. So you were left at that point now in the mid-70s, late 70s, thinking, well, what do I do?
I didn't relate it to my dad. It was just a case of I just didn't know. There wasn't a great deal of direction, and that's the first spot or place that we as a community fall down on, because of that generational. You know, our parents came over, you know, bless them, they did as well as they could do, because they had their own sort of like challenges.
Trying to get a job was a hard thing, getting a place to live.
Working nights, and you know, to put food on the table, to make sure that you look presentable when you go to school, you know. And so that next phase, which was a case of preparing you to go out into the wider world, was missing. But you have to learn, and it's only something that I learned afterwards, because there are many people that have come across of our generation blame our parents, and you can't do that.
But
they can't do that.
This is the thing. It's like, as you're talking about that, I was struck by this thought that, remember, that generation came to feel a need that was already here. So it's not like they had been prepared over their side that they were going to come and fill these menial jobs. And mostly, in most cases, it was menial jobs, from driving buses to, you know, working in the steelworks and stuff. It was never something that you prepared for.
Absolutely.
So you're definitely right. The parents can't be blamed on that one.
Well, that's an important point, isn't it? Which is, I would say for me, and I'm hearing it for a lot of people, that they understood their parents better as they got older. When you're young, you can't, it's difficult to understand.
It's
when
difficult.
You're 18, 20, 22, you're too young, you're just sort of self-focused, and you have to be to a degree to actually get through that bit. But, you know, you get older, you have children, you begin to realise and understand what your parents went through to actually, as you say, to provide food for you, to provide a roof over your head, to do all those things there. So that actually, when we ask that question, we keep going back to this one about, you know, people saying, I love you. Well, you know, it's not a word I heard that often when I was growing up, but I understood acts of love.
Yes.
And the act of love which my dad did, and my mum did, but my dad I'm going to talk about here, is going to that factory every day and doing that work.
But just on that point of love, though, is huge, because, you know, some of us are aware of their upbringing and what they had to go through, and the beatings and all the, you know, that they also went through. So they were brought up without any love. And so it's very difficult to pass on that something which you have not got in that first place.
Yeah.
And then it's down to this next generation to accept that, to realise that,
Yes.
and then learn.
And I think we had it last week with Lloyd. We were talking about this, and he was talking about attachment styles, for instance. But there's a language of love, isn't there?
Yeah.
And actually, if you've never acquired that language of love
Yeah.
In your young age,
Yeah.
then actually it takes some work as you get older
Yeah.
to acquire that language of love. To be able to say to people who you're close to, well, actually, you are this to me.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
yeah,
also
that's it.
to your kids.
Yeah.
And that the other side of, when I was at school and trying to figure out, and actually before I got into the leisure and recreation, I was a welder. And the only reason why I went into welding is because my best friend, so we were close, and he'd already sorted it out because I think his dad was a welder, and it paid good
okay.
money. It paid good money, and so I was good at metalwork. And I thought, okay, then I'll go into that. That was made redundant after a couple of years as such. Again, it was a city in Guilds. Then I went into the leisure and recreation, and then whilst I was doing that, which was really good, and there was an opportunity that came up to work at Butlins.
All right.
So which one did you go to then?
I went to the one in Bognor. Never knew where Bognor was.
No, down on the Sussex.
Yeah, never knew where it was, and didn't know what it meant. But I thought, okay, then there's an opportunity there for the summer.
Yeah.
So because there's a choice, isn't there? Because in those days they had Saturday jobs.
Yeah.
In the mornings you had a paper round.
Oh, yes.
So it's either, should I go and stack some shelves to earn a bit of money, or go down to Bognor as a lifeguard and earn money down there and have an experience. And
It's a big step, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
people will leave in Sheffield, in cities like Sheffield, to go to London.
Yeah.
But to Bognor.
yeah. For me also is because it was a bit of an escape.
Yeah.
Because again, still I wasn't sure of the direction of where I was going, and so it was just a case of I'll go. And then I remember the first day I was there, you got the instruction. In them days, the old carriage trains,
Yes.
Oh,
and I
yes.
got there.
We're going back in time, aren't we?
Yeah.
No,
So there was 6 in a carriage.
It took all day to get there. And when I got there, it was a bit like an army barracks. And so all I was told when I, to pack was obviously your trunks, some white socks, to get a white shirt, and I think, was it white trousers? Possibly white trousers, I think. But I didn't know what that was all about. So when I got there, you go straight to security, they sign you up, you then go into a place where they then issue you with your kit. So the first one was a vest with a B on it, Butlins. Okay, that's fine. Then there's and then there was a tie, a yellow and blue tie, stripes. I said, what's all this about? And then there was a red coat. I says, what's this for? I says, well, and they laughed at me. They all laughed at me. And then had a meeting with the head lifeguard, I think probably the following morning, introduced me, told me what the shifts are. And then I said, well, what's this for, this jacket? And they laughed at me as well and said, all you need to do is that when you finish your last shift of the day, 3 shifts, hour and a half on, hour and a half off, you then go to the Red Coat offices and says, where's that? And says, and then they showed me where it was. And I said, then put that jacket on, put your tie on, your white thing there. Have you got any white socks? I says, yeah, I've got white shoes. I says, yeah, I've got that there as well. And that's where you go. But when I put the red jacket on and put the tie on, and then as I'm walking down, I started walking down the main thoroughfare, there's people coming up to me and says, can I be autograph? Can you autograph? I say, you can what's going on here? Then I went up to it's called the Red Scrums Entertainment, met all the other redcoats then there. And then I was assigned another activity that you was involved, whether it be assisting with calling bingo or doing going to the modern ballroom, you know, where they're doing the foxtrot tango and everything like that, and you get involved. And I learned how to do that. Or some other snooker or a big theatre where when you've got a show on, you'd be there entertaining the crowd or the audience, the people in the auditorium before they actually come on and everything. So it was a baptism of fire and a huge learning curve.
It must have been. So I mean, how many other black redcoats were there at Bognor?
Do you know the answer to this?
I know the answer. Well, I have to ask the question.
You were the only one.
I was the only one. But you know something? I didn't realise it at the time. Obviously, there were a few staff, but they were in the, might be on the showgrounds or the place where they go fishing. Or in the or in the dining room, but there was no black people there. But in those days, there wasn't any. But I wasn't too concerned about it because it wasn't the way that I go about life and business and everything. And it was only actually, I think it might have been, because every so often we have a get together. And one of these get-togethers where we went down to Bognor, and there's probably about 20, 25 people there. And I met the old entertainment manager that I hadn't seen, then he took me on. And then he said to me, Michael, because back then they called me Michael, there was no Mick or Mike. Do you realise you was the first black redcoat ever in this country?
No.
Yeah.
Well, that
is awesome.
That is something. That is because we all. I mean, I never went to Butlins, but we heard about Butlins, etc. That's quite something because you are a blaze trailer, then, aren't you? Because often there is talk now about well, it was when we were growing up there, people doing different things. And sometimes we don't do different things because we feel we don't have the confidence, so we don't have this.
We are afraid.
And that's quite courageous of you. Even the way you tell that story there, Sheffield to Bognor. I mean, Bognor Regis. I mean, if you'd said, I don't know, Southampton, I could just about go with that. But Bognor Regis, I mean, that in itself, I mean, you said to your parents, I'm off to Bognor Regis. They said, where? How weird that.
I think for me, like, I'm intrigued to find out, because we have alluded to this, the black experience, so to speak, in Sheffield. But I've always wondered, there are some people say, I wasn't aware that I was black until I was called either the N-word or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like I'm trying to figure out, when you're being raised, are you being told about the very fact that you are who you are?
No.
No.
No, not at all. And so when you hear that word and others, it's a shock.
Yeah.
But and again, I don't blame our parents. Because they're also dealing with it as well and may not know how to deal with it with their offspring and everything. Whereas with my kids, I prepared them for that.
But could you also say as well, I mean, back in the day, we went to school and we did a few things, but it was quite a small, tight-knit type of world we lived in, wasn't it?
Indeed, yeah.
So, I'm going to allude to a story about Clive Murray. When Clive Murray talks about growing up in Bolton in the 60s, and he says that when he was growing up, at the weekend, his uncle would come across to the house and be in the front room,
Yeah.
and they'd have some drinks.
Yeah.
And he said it was like a little piece of Jamaica was there.
Yeah.
And that's the memory which I remember at the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, whatever happened during the week elsewhere,
Yeah.
at the weekend, that was your world. So you had
Yeah,
these
yeah.
two worlds there.
Yeah.
Which, you know, there was the world out there where you went to school and you dealt with that. And then you had this
Yeah.
other world where uncles and friends would pass by and drop by and talk. And
Yeah.
they'd always be talking about back home. And, you know, you get all these stories there. You
Yeah.
thought you were actually, half the time I used to think, back home was like, you know, it was the conversation all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, that's all you ever heard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just picking up on a little bit of that, when I did come back home from Butlins, because it opened up my eyes
Yeah.
in a lot of different aspects.
So you'd had the summer season there.
Yeah.
When's that
there's-
finish? September?
Yeah, summer season, and it was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Working 6 days a week, probably 18-hour days, and meeting people from a wide range of diverse cultures who know actually there. There's no racism there. There's a lot of camaraderie, and all the staff, many of the staff had travelled down from all over the country, to work at these different places there as well, and so the experience was phenomenal. So you can imagine now, I came back to Sheffield and I was just buzzing
Yeah.
with the experience that I'd had, which was totally different from what I
And
experienced.
did people want to listen to it?
That's what I'm coming to.
Yes.
I thought they were.
Yeah.
I thought they were, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And it saddened me. And what I did then was that I stopped talking about what I did. I focused on where have you been? Where have you been? We haven't seen you around, Mick. Yeah. And at first I thought, oh, yeah, I'll be this, doing that, all the rest of it. I met this person, that person, and all that, you know, all the stars. And yeah, I thought they were listening, but they weren't. And then either somebody said something to me, or I recognised and realised that either there was an element of jealousy, or they may have felt that because they haven't had that type of experience, and they might have been in the supermarkets, and doing like manual jobs and everything. My experience was a world away from that, and so there could be a potential of envy.
Yeah.
So I stopped talking about it.
Well, it is. I mean, you've talked about even when you going back home, there is a different relationship,
It is a
isn't
different relationship. I think it's I think sometimes it's like trying to explain where you are and fully realizing where people are still at. Sometimes it seems like it's a tall order. And our people, to be honest, I think sometimes our community, somehow, we alluded to this last week, like you feel like you have to pay for progressing. You know what I mean?
And you know, I want to rail against that a little bit to say that actually, it's not progressing as such. There's a change which is taking
moving
place.
on.
Yes, there's a change which is taking place. And is it that you can appear to someone else as if your change is actually nearly like a statement to them that
No, but-
things are the same for them? Maybe.
No, but
I don't
remember,
know.
But remember that it's like when you make any move or any progress, it reflects on those people who are
Yes.
still at the same space. You know what I'm saying? So we move on, and I saw this with a lot of people who moved from home to the UK. They came here, and the expectations, there's this unspoken expectations that naturally you support people back home. When they send a message, you basically deal with it, because suddenly there's this assumption that wherever you have moved to is better than where people are, and therefore things are easier for you. You know what I'm saying? So, and many of us have had to deal with that. And then we suddenly found that people were coming over here. We remember the first public, I'll say, figure in my lifetime, Emmanuel, was a guy called Dambuzo Marachera. He was a poet. He was he became mentally ill and ended up, living like in some. The story is told about him living in a park in London. You see what I'm saying? And there's been a slew of other people, as a result of that.
Okay, let's pick up on that mental, people becoming ill, because again, if something which, this podcast is very much about managing mental health there.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, people back home or Jamaica, when they came from Jamaica or when you went on holiday to Jamaica, I heard people say, is it true that the black man in England goes mad? And as a kid, as a sort of like young adult, I used to be a bit annoyed with that. And then actually, you find out a lot of that's true. And in some respects, you can understand the idea of you've come from somewhere to somewhere else and how you manage it. But that illness is also for us.
Yeah.
We were growing up with it. I mean, that experience you had going down to Bognor Regis was an exciting experience, but it could have been a very difficult experience. The experience coming back and it not being validated is also can have an effect on you as well. And it can also have another effect, which is, you are restless. You have to move on again. There's a constant restlessness then,
Indeed.
which in itself, could, I don't know, does it reflect a sort of like seeking contentment but not able to get contentment?
Possibly. Because I remember I did an interview several years ago on BBC Radio Sheffield with Roni Robinson. And usually the producers will send out a form beforehand to fill it in, and then there's a bit of, is there anything interesting that you've done? And so naturally he asked the question in the interview and said, you were a red coat? He said, you were the first black red. It was incredible. I bet you had some great stories. He says, but I'm not sharing them live. I'm not sharing them live here. And then he asked me a question which I'd never considered. And he said, what transferable skills did you learn back then as a red coat, as a black red coat, do you use today in your life? And when I asked that and I tried, and I'm digesting it with Brian, it felt like an age. But then I think subconsciously it just flipped out and I said everything. Yeah, I've been to university, I've got lots of qualifications and everything, but a lot of what I learnt, how to deal with with different communities, how to communicate and get on well, has probably come from there. And also how at the end of the first year that I was at Butlins, you then have an interview with your entertainment manager. And he was a very strict type of person.
Those days, managers were like,
very
they weren't sort of like looking after your sort of emotional
well-being. There was no well-being.
And if you did something, what you weren't supposed to do and you got caught, you got fired. You'd get security guards come to you, empty, get everything in your case, and off you go.
Off you go.
And he said to me, so in your head before you have the meeting, you're thinking, hope you didn't see that. 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 And then he said in this really drawn out, way that he speaks very slow and particular, so you make sure that you hear every word. And I said, you've changed. I remember the first day that you came here. You come out of your shell. And where you are now is just like, wow. He says, I want you to come back the next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that, all these small little incidental things, which I went through, helped, probably subconsciously.
I mean, David Campbell, when he was on, he talked about that sort of being at the centre of something and you're being comfortable. And actually, you need to have other experiences where your comfort zone is actually, you're getting to the edge of it.
Yes.
Because that's where growth takes place.
Yeah, or the magic.
Yeah, or the magic. In your case,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
there's a magic took place there.
Yeah, well, the magic, they say the magic happens just outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But a lot of times within the community, we don't seem to do that because it's we stay within that community and or probably not. And we might have had those dreams, and in a lot of cases, those dreams, those aspirations, if we did have them in the first place, or even when you do get you get into an organisation and you want to move forward, and you're getting knocked back, which I did a lot of the times, but you need a level of resilience to get through and deal with the mental health, because the mental health toll is significant, to the point whereby when I came back, obviously from Butlins, and then I went to London to spend London, for a good period of time, and then and then I moved back to Sheffield. It wasn't a natural choice, but when I came back to Sheffield, connected eventually with people that I grew up with, there was a massive gap.
Well, there's been a lifetime, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
But on that coming back, because I first met you on I'd sign up for a mental health first aid course.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm quite excited about it. And I go into this room, and there's a few people there, and there's another black person here, which, you always, I wonder what that person does for whatever there. And this is the bit which always gets me. What I didn't expect was that it was the other black person, Mike, who would be the leader of the session.
Oh, yes.
And, I think it's it's one of those, life tells you that, but it's actually still bad.
Yeah.
But actually, I was then really pleased that you were.
Yeah.
But what got you into that then? Into mental health first aid? Because, it's something which I'd done before, but, clearly it's something which is a very important aspect of life today, especially in the workplace.
Yeah.
But what got you into it?
What got me into it was in lockdown, because when I talked about, coming up to Sheffield, I worked for a period of time in an industry, but there was always, in a different industry, I should say, health and beauty. No, in health and beauty, beauty and cosmetics.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke there about
Yeah,
beauty and
yeah.
cosmetics, but I won't do that.
And you can if
You're
you
looking
want.
good.
Yeah, I'm not the only one to say that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, but that's another thing. Again, as men,
Yeah.
can we say it to one another?
We can.
We can.
Well,
we
yeah,
should say,
we
shouldn't
can and we
Yes,
should.
yes,
We
should.
definitely should.
And also, there's something which I just had to, what to call it? There's something which I had to correct when you said that in terms of my reply.
Yes.
And that should have been, which I said secondly, once it gone into my head, was thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was thank you, because again, that's all part of, how you process things.
Yes.
And because a lot of times, it's usually the opposite. And so, if you're going to see, somebody in the black community, could be a parent or a friend or something like that, they might say, well, your face look a little bit slimmer. no, your belly's a bit bigger. That's
Yes.
the last time I've seen you. And that impacts your mental health.
No, it's true.
Yeah, rather than saying you're looking well.
You're looking well.
For then to just say thank you.
But
we get the other way around.
And the thank you is important, isn't it?
Incredible,
Because
yes.
you need to be also able to accept
Yeah.
praise.
Yes.
Because if you've been taught not to accept praise,
Yeah.
you don't even do this sort of like the acknowledgement of
Yeah.
something nice said.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, because one thing I've always, I know I struggled with this thing of like, when somebody gives you a compliment,
Yeah.
like how do you reply it without, because sometimes people think that, the reply kind of shows how full of yourself you are.
Yeah.
Like if somebody say, "Oh, you look handsome," and say, "I know," you know what I mean? Because there are some people like the kids will just say, "I know,"
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Which to me I think is appropriate.
It
Because
is.
if they think they're cute, they're cute. Because
Yeah.
many people have told them they're cute.
Yeah.
But then as grown-ups, we sort of have that sort of like, it's like this sense of humility that
Yes.
is
Modesty,
not based in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, when first of all, I think we should say, as positive things as we can to one another.
To one
Yeah.
another. Yeah, 'cause For some of us, that's the only thing.
and then to actually acknowledge those
Yeah.
positive things said to
Yeah.
one another. And I know often that's not what we do.
It isn't.
You know?
We do it the other way around.
Yes, we sort of
Yeah.
run people down,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
joke. We
Yeah.
call we have a joke,
But it has an impact.
But it does have an impact because
Yeah.
actually, we were talking downstairs about hypermasculinity,
Yeah.
and I think it was you and I, wasn't it? And we were talking about how sometimes when you're in a group of men,
Yes, yes,
and there's maybe I don't know half a dozen of you, and it's like everyone's trying to be the top dog.
Yeah.
And the energy which you're putting into that
Yeah.
is like it's
hard,
tiring.
it is tiring. It is
Yes.
really, really tiring.
Yeah, and focusing on those things rather than, or possibly or potentially looking at what you could do with a career, which is more challenging to be able to go into that, out of your comfort zone and where that magic is. But going back to your original question around how to get into mental health, around lockdown, the type of therapies that I was doing at the time.
So you so prior to lockdown, you were
No,
already...
sorry. Prior to lockdown, I was doing lots of complementary therapies.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Sheffield, in a clinic in Broom Hill, not too far away from here. And then, as we know, in lockdown, we weren't able to do hands-on. There was a lot of other things that I wasn't able to do. So then it was a case of I was on, all the meetings were on Zoom. And I'm just going into my book, who can I call, who can I connect with, what are they doing, what are they up to, how can I diversify? So there's a lady, bless her, called Anne Wilson, and she at the time was working with the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, and she was saying to me, or an organisation associated with that, and she said to me, that some funding that's available for businesses. And so if you can find something that might be related to what you do, it might not be related to what you do, then you might be able to get some funding. And so after a long drawn out process, which took several months, and again, help, I was able to access that funding. So that enabled me, first of all, to go onto the mental health first aid course like you did, because you need to do that. And then I did my training online. My mental health first aid instructor training online. But then after that, there was then another hurdle, because as a trainer or instructor in training, because I was thinking, once I've done it, I'll be able to go out there and start doing the training. Oh no, it was a case of I had to then find 16 people, get them to give, remarks, feedback, to give them feedback.
Testimony.
Online. Which wasn't easy because the numbers had been decreased. And also then once I got signed off for that, then I had to do this for in person. And at the time then it's a case of, wow, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And so there's an intranet or the portal that we can go onto as instructors, because you can't do it on your own. You have to have, if you're in training, you've got to do it. You've got to find another instructor who's willing for you to be a second instructor. And then build up the numbers. But at the time in COVID, in lockdown, and when we're coming out of lockdown, it took ages. It took about a year and a half. And then to make matters a little bit more complex, coming towards the end of that, I then was doing a training course in St Albans with the lead trainer. I did the first day, that went fine. Then I went out to lunch with one of my clients who lives in that area, and we went out for lunch the evening. Then I went to my colleague's house, where I was staying with a colleague at the time, the 2 days, went home as you do as normal, or to his house. And then some part in the night, headache, diarrhea, and I couldn't sleep. And a sick diarrhea all through the night. And all I'm thinking at the time, I'm not going to be able to get signed off, because I needed this to get signed off. I'm thinking I'm not going to get signed off, but I was in pain. So I just managed to be able to have the energy to call her and to say, I'm not going to make it. But it was answer machine. And then, fortunately, my colleague, my friend, I just said, I'm in pain. He got some tablets for me. Nothing was working. And then he said, we need to get you to the hospital. So he drove me to the Lister Hospital at Stevenage. I was there for a long time. I wasn't aware that whilst I was there in A&E, they didn't tell me that they were looking for a bed, but they couldn't find one. And they were doing a lot of tests, but I was out of it. I couldn't see. I was in a huge amount of pain. And probably there was people coming up to me saying, you want a sandwich? You want a sandwich? Because I just couldn't sit still. I was in agony. And then finally, I was going to leave the hospital. But I didn't realise I had the candle in my arm because I was there for so long. I was there for so long, and I called my friend to come and get me. He says, "Have you been sitting there?" I said, "No." I said, "But I'm going to go." And so one of the nurses, I kept saying to them, "When it's me, when is it me?" It was me. You're next. You've been saying that for hours. And then I said, "No, I'm leaving." He says, "If you leave, that's up to you. We can't stop you." And so my friend came. Obviously, he wasn't happy. He went to see someone there. That didn't change anything. And so the nurse said, "What do you want to do?" I says, "I'm leaving. Let's go." I didn't know the state I was in, and they shouldn't have let me go. And so they started to take the candela out and take me all up. Then my name got called. And when the name got called, I went into this room, 2 consultants there, terribly sorry, Mr. Lawrence, that their communication hasn't been good. The thing is, though, whilst you was going through, we did a lot of tests, CAT scans, this scan, blood scans, and all the rest of it. And you've been you've got what is known as a tumour in your pituitary gland.
Ooh.
And tumour in there, and you need to go into hospital immediately. But we've got no beds here. We're ringing round to find a hospital for you to go to in the south. I says, "But I live in the north." "No, you need to go to hospital, wherever one we can find you." So they got me off the ward. Fortunately, they took me to a hospital, the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, I'll give you the quick version, 2 days later, I had an operation. Fortunately for me, it was benign, and also there was also looking for looking into possible MS as well, because from the MRI scans, they thought that there were some white lesions on my brain.
Quite a lot taking place then.
Yeah, huge. There's a huge amount going on, and the reason why I share that, because there is a link to mental health.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, mental health and ageing. Not you, because you're younger, but we all age.
It's
one of the things we've been talking about, which is how, as you get older, how one manages the aging process, the fact that actually, you're going to get illness, you're going to have to manage that illness, a loved one might be ill, and how you manage that as well. And then alongside that is, how do you put in there the things which make you feel good about yourself, the things which excite you? Because when you talk there about, for instance, the Red Coat days, there was an excitement. It was palpable, wasn't it? And I know we can't get those days back, but we still want that excitement in ourselves, don't we, in our souls?
But we can do it. Downstairs when we got their coffee, what we were talking about cricket.
Yes.
We were talking about athletics. We were talking about, football and myself, basketball. That's the excitement. That is the excitement. And it's building into your life. And when and Formula One.
Formula One. Yeah, which I don't know anything to about Formula One.
And Formula One. And that's all part of self-care. That is all part of self-care. And without that, and we're not good at it. Not just our community, but the country. A lot of people that I work with individually, even when I run the mental health first aid courses, and you've been on one of them, and we talk about self-care. For many people, we don't prioritise our self-care, but that's what is essential, because that's what gets us through on a day-to-day basis. Listening to music, you know, having a bit of a sing in the shower, you know, having some plants that you might tend to, having an allotments, whatever it is.
We'll ask
cooking.
you then, what's on your turntable? What your metaphorical turntable?
turntable.
Yeah,
I thought
what's
it's a
on your
metaphorical
turntable, man?
turntable. I know it doesn't
Yeah.
say when you say what you're streaming in a moment.
Yeah,
what's
But
on-
what's
what's
on
on
your
your playlist?
turntable?
It varies, yeah, and it varies. And so in the morning it'd be meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, that's meditation.
Do you meditate every day?
Yeah, every day, every morning I meditate. That gets me off to a good start in the day, and just gets me grounded and clears my helps to clear my mind. And then at the turntable, so to speak, it's more about the radio stations that I listen to, and so the go-to is usually solar radio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's solar radio, and another radio stations like it doesn't come. I've lost my train of thought, but there's the solar radio is one of them, and some other radio stations, and many of these were pirate stations.
Yes, back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, and so and also know many of the DJs because again part of that self-care going to soul events, whereas again people from our generation you don't see them. I don't know the late. The late barber, Mr. T, used to put certain events on, and Patrick Green used to put events on. But those numbers started to dwindle as we age, but they didn't have the income, or we get comfortable in our environment, regardless of whether they have the resources to do that. But that is very, very, very important.
That comfort in your own environment, can that be sometimes we're a bit too comfortable in our environment? Because I for one sometimes can be quite happy just of an evening being in my nice environment. It's nice, but actually it means you don't see people.
You do.
You know, you're not having those sorts of new activities which are sort of, stimulating your thinking, stimulating your body, whatever it is. But we can get comfortable, can't we?
We do, and we talked. Was it when we had a coffee a few weeks ago about going out walking, making sure that we connect with other people.
Yeah.
To have those conversations to keep the things moving. And if you go back to our parents' generation, they had lots of community groups. Was it the Everyone Centre or the Hub?
The Hub.
There was quite a few.
It's ironic, isn't it? But those days when the home had less than it has now, you had to go out and you had to meet people. But home now can have a lot more.
Indeed.
You can be connected to the entire world in your own home.
Yeah.
So there's more reason for you not to go out. But actually, we should find a way of going out and doing things. But can I just pick up on one thing there about meditation?
Yeah.
Because I know one of your things is in terms of holidays.
Yeah.
Is that you go away on meditation holidays?
Yeah, yeah.
And you've been to places, is it like Thailand?
Yeah, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Sri Lanka, I've been to different ones in the UK and also Switzerland.
Damn. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And so what is it when you go away, for 10 days?
Yeah, 10 days, yeah.
And again, you're going to something which, for many of us, just our whole idea of meditation, which I have done meditation, but I probably have a sort of barrier, which is, could I go away to somewhere where I don't know people there, or all those other bits and pieces there, which are sort of like, they become like mental barriers for you. And actually they're mental barriers to you actually going to maybe experience something which might be out of this world.
Yeah, but those mental barriers are there. We need to move beyond them and either have conversations or go to places which enable you to do so, because if you're not experienced these things and put yourself out there, because we all have those choices when we start. When we wake up in the morning, we can either decide to do something or not do something. That's right. And a lot of times we choose not to in some regards. And so, I go those places. A lot of times I'm the only black male I'm the only black male when I go to those places. But that's not on my mind.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's the least of my thoughts. It's a case of I'm going there because I know that I'll get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
Because I will learn from other people. We're all on a journey. I'll learn from where they are, what they're doing, and then you know, and that's that. And you're learning about the different sort of cultures, and then you can bring that knowledge, you can bring that wisdom back with you, and then you get growth, and then you get growth and continue to sort of grow.
I'm going to flip it back now. When you came back from Redcoats, and you were trying to tell people about this, people weren't necessarily listening. When you come back from your meditation holiday, are more people listening?
It's a good question. Yes and no, because again, it depends whether you're open to it or not. Because don't forget, when you start experiencing or you're doing certain things, and whether it be going to university or going away on an exotic holiday or doing certain things, what a lot of people do, they benchmark you against that. Because whilst I was out there, you know, I'll go on my own, put something out on Facebook, you show some pictures, and people go, oh, I'd love to be there, oh, I'd love to do that. But they all put barriers in there. You know, and that's lots of people, or they'll say, you know, I've been there, that's lovely, you should go to here, or you should go to this place or that place. So we all put barriers in there. And so when you do come back, or I do come back and I have those conversations and share it with various people, the people who get it, the people who, you know, who meditate, the people who go to those parts of the world, the people who travel, they get it, they understand it. But those people who, you know, may have, you know, or look at it differently, that's, you know, I don't judge them.
Well, it's interesting because I've got a friend, Maxine, and Maxine's travelled all over the world, a lot of it, black woman, travelled on her own. And I was going to France a couple of years ago on my own, and I was there for about 10 days on my own, and I was getting quite sort of like apprehensive about it. But I didn't want to tell Maxine I was getting apprehensive about it, because she would look at me as to say, what's your problem?
And rightly so.
Yes. And then Angela Burrows, we were walking and we were talking about France, and she was saying her daughter was going out to France, and it was the place which I knew. So we were talking about that, and I said, oh, who's she going with? And she said, no, she's going on her own. And her daughter's about, I don't know, 24, 25, 26, that sort of age there. But again, that sense of, you know, putting barriers, you know, and then when you see people, and it's great when you see people who have just, in a sense, said, this is what I want to do, and I'm not going to let that stop me, and I do it, whatever it might be, and that is, whatever age you are, you can see that, and I've seen it in a couple, you know, a number of people now, they do things.
They do,
that's true.
You know, all the way back, because, you know, when I used to go away on holiday, when I was married, and the kids would come with us, my ex-wife is English, and so we got down to, you know, mixed-race children. And from the ages of maybe 5, 6, or probably one of the youngest one was probably in, you know, cot at the time, when we first used to travel. And so certain countries, there is a layer of complexity for countries who are not familiar with that image and the food and everything. But if you go there, if you think of that, if that's in your mind before you go, you don't go. All you look at is when you go. And it wasn't a case of my ex-wife saying, should we go there? Are you okay there? No. It's a case of, well, she booked most of the places.
So you go.
Because at the time, and it's strange because when we were young, in the early days, it's a case of, is there anything that you need? You know, what are your requirements for going? You know, and I'll have a look. As long as there's a TV, there's
Formula One.
There are some
cricket.
There's some as a sport, any outdoor activities, and I'm fine. Because, you know, and then I'm fine. You know, so yeah.
Yep. we usually have a question at the end.
Oh, yes.
Which is, I stole it. I did rob you of your occasion of doing
no,
it 2 weeks ago.
Rob away, bro. Rob away. I mean, maybe this is like a precursor to the Donald podcast.
Go on.
The joke 2 weeks ago was that actually I thought Lungani there, as I had to leave early there,
Yeah.
and he was going to continue. Was trying to make it the Lungani show featuring Donald.
And
Now he's beginning to think it's the Donald show featuring
know,
Lungani.
yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah.
bother with the featuring Lungani. He doesn't even come up on it anymore.
Well, that's it. You know, like just
doing you out of something.
No,
Yeah.
I'll be the
Are you
guy.
comfortable with that?
No, I don't mind.
Well, I'll do it then.
No, I don't mind at all. You know, because
Yeah.
he does a good job. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Also,
wouldn't
thank you.
mind. I wouldn't mind being on the technical side of things because I love that. You see
Brilliant.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
sometimes like because he prepares. He reads books and stuff. you know?
Oh no, no.
Yeah.
No,
So
the
is
only
it-
thing I do beforehand is that like to have a good conversation beforehand.
Yeah.
And if you can have a good conversation beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
then it helps the conversation you're going to have because
Yeah.
it's the conversation, isn't it? I
Indeed,
mean,
indeed,
and
yeah.
nearly everything we've been talking about here has got conversation is a core element to it.
Yeah.
Relationships are about conversations,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sometimes that conversation is some quiet time,
Yeah.
That's
reflection
that's
time.
Yeah.
That's it.
but
'Cause-
it's there.
Yeah.
And also, I
yeah.
think for me, like sometimes it's just listening to you because let me tell you, most of my working life has been behind the scenes. So this is like alien to me because I'm like this. I'm literally out of my depth.
No, you're not.
No, this
you're
is the
not.
thing. You know why
Again,
I'm saying
we
that?
talked about barriers.
No, these are self-imposed. No, they're very self-imposed barriers.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I live my life vicariously.
Yeah, good.
just by observation
Yeah.
and learning. Because the information I glean from here
Yeah.
also informs what I write about.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So.
Yeah.
I spend more time observing. That's why Donald alluded to
Yeah.
that. I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes
Yeah.
I approach subjects that
Yeah.
why my questioning is usually sometimes invasive is
Or
Yeah.
left field.
Yeah.
it's simply because of that.
Yeah.
I like to get under the skin of
Good.
the thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because we never really get to know each other. Unless we ask question, and I'm
Yeah.
a believer that we should ask question. Which actually, this is the first question we ask people. Remember when we first went to Faith, we asked a bunch of men like, when is the last time you cried?
Probably not long ago when I was meditating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a deep sort of like meditation, which is there's different styles or different areas of meditation when you go deep. And it was a guided meditation. And probably only recently, not so long ago, probably within the last week or so, you go deep. It brings up emotion, brings up memories. And so, yeah, not long ago. Not long ago.
It's like, because I know some of these celebrity type, they'll talk about that ayahuasca thing that they do. Wait, it's sort of like, induced by some other
Yeah.
edibles and stuff and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always, kind of been fascinated about that, and also the very fact that, because we are no longer, as men, like we were talking earlier about the fact that trying to kind of exude that sense of, being in charge and stuff, and you know what I mean, and trying to be the alpha male in the room, and
Yeah, I was only ever beta.
I have let me tell you, I
never
don't
ever.
even.
In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
some people would question whether or not I was
Yeah.
beta.
Yeah.
But can I one of
Go
the
on.
things I'm going to say here
Yeah.
is that I said at the beginning, and I'm just reflecting on our conversation today, and how fortunate
Yeah.
I think Lungani and I are.
We're very,
Because
very, very.
The people we've spoken to over the past year, the fascinating lives, the fascinating thoughts and insights they have,
Yeah.
amongst people we know, amongst our community, which, sometimes, we often can do a down on ourselves.
Yeah.
That's it.
And you want to just reverse it sometimes. Go, no.
Yeah.
The people we've been talking to, who most of whom I know to a degree, but as we've got talking, I've been really quite excited. I've been incredibly impressed. I've just been lifted. I mean, that's it. I've been lifted by the conversations I've had here, and I've been lifted by the conversation I've had with you today.
Thank you.
So when is the book coming out then?
There's a book in everybody.
It's going to be a good one.
There's a book in everybody, because one of the things that we aren't aware that we need to do is to, because it's one of my mentors, and I have various mentors to help me, and I've had them for many years, and to also help me with my mental health, for many years, because we've all been to, funerals where people might have taken their life, and there's conversations around why is it, why is this happening and everything, because we're not dealing with it. But I think one of our roles is that now that we have got to handle it, we have these conversations, and we're being inspired by these stories. Then there's one main thing that one of the mentors talks about, and that's learn, teach, do.
Okay.
You learn, teach, do. Learn from the people that we are around, and we continue to learn ourselves. And then we teach. Teach others so that they can do. Because we know we have this term, role model. And when we was growing up, we looked at, Johnny Barnes or Vince or the cricket stars that we talked about. But also we need them in business, and we also need them in life.
Yeah.
And it's down to people who have been those trailblazers, people have, been able to achieve various things. And there needs to be format, or there needs to be something where people then in the schools and our kids are able to then stand on our shoulders and move on. And also those teachings need to happen, because we're not, because they're not aware of it. And like with my kids now, they're in London and they're doing phenomenally well. My eldest daughter, she's in front of the cameras a lot. She's in front, and they were inspired by me, and they're also inspired by the mum, who is a successful entrepreneur as well. And so both of one of my daughters, my youngest daughter, she was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder and dyslexia, and now she works for a major beauty company, and she's an executive assistant.
So when you're growing up and used to your parents, we're proud of him. I don't know if I've ever got that one, but we're proud of him.
I did get that. I did
so
that.
You're proud of your kids.
Yeah. Well, I was at. Remember, who was it now? It was a funeral. It was a funeral, and there was a lady that passed away from our generation, and she used to be on the soul scene, and there's. The church is packed, and then the vicar said to everybody, or the pastor said, "Does anyone want to share some information?" I did, and I was compelled to to stand up and go to the pulpit. I didn't have a clue what I was going to say at all. And I said to them, "I'm just going to share with you, how I knew this person, because everyone was talking about Sheffield and the relations got local and everything." I said, I knew her from the soul scene. Also, she was good with music, and she was good, and knew her music. And there was a Facebook group that we used to post stuff on all the time. And she shared with me that what she used to do, when I posted some stuff there, because it was all this, she'd just go to Mr. T and say, "Oh, Mick's posted this. What should I post? Anything better?" And then, but when I got up onto the pulpit, and I said some things, and I said something, just come out. I saw halfway down the aisle my mum, and she had this loud, she had this real big smile on her face, And then I remember at the end, people coming up to me and saying, "Thank you, that was brilliant, that was great, so inspirational what you said." And then, you know, I went outside and my mum's there, and she come up. I went up to her, and she said, "Michael, that was a beautiful thing you said. However, you never tell them your name."
But this, do you know, it's like every time it's like I was.
You're never going to get it full on.
No, you'll never get it full. But I think it was their way of kind of. That was their way of grounding.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's like for me, it's like I'm, you know, like every time I look at him, I'm like, he looks like his mother. You know, that's all. Like it's like because you're like an uncanny.
Yeah.
You bear an uncanny resemblance to your mother, man.
Yeah. And also, I'm now, you know, I'm helping her away because I've done that inner work. A lot of people haven't.
Yes.
I've done that inner work. So whereas when I was younger, and if I hadn't have done that inner work, I would have a different view to our parents. Say it's their fault, their fault, their fault. So now I've done that inner work, I'm able to help her with some of the challenges that she's facing, the aches and pains that you do at that age, and have a better understanding, give her love, and also...
And that's in itself is beautiful, isn't it? To give love as well.
Yeah, to give her that love.
Give love and receive love.
Yeah, give that time and that better understanding, and I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I dealt with my challenges that I faced growing up, from being in Sheffield to Bognor to London and all the rest of it. I wouldn't know what to do, I wouldn't know where to go because I hadn't done that work on myself.
Well,
so
I'm going to finish. Can I finish my last word?
Yeah, go on.
And then you can have the last word. My last word is to say, thank you very much for appearing. You are the very first redcoat ever on our podcast.
What I should have done, and also I had the insight at the time to bring it with, you know, I've got it.
Oh yeah.
And when we have get-togethers with the other redcoats.
Well, you can still fit in it.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I've done that inner work.
Yes.
And all
You've done the yes.
Yeah. And it fits.
Yeah, and it still fits.
And it fits. You know, it still fits all those years on, because all the others who've gone there and they said, "I didn't think. Why didn't I think of bringing that red coat?" Yeah. It fits.
So we usually ask, you know, like, so what's your thing? You know, like, meaning, you know, in terms of what the thing that you do to kind of stay on top of your mental health. But I just wanted to kind of twist it slightly and ask, if you were to talk to that guy who went to Bognor at that time, having lived, what word would you say to him in terms of kind of safeguarding himself?
To that younger me?
Yeah.
Great question. I've had those talks already. About connecting with that, inner child, and I suppose that what I may have done, or probably that's what I would have said to that person, would be: now you've got that grounding. Now you've got that ground. You've got experience and knowledge. Take it further. Have a better understanding of what you want to do, and then learn about money.
Yes.
How to manage money.
How to manage money.
Yeah, money literate. Get literate with money.
With money.
Yeah.
That's it. That's an eternal question for many of us.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But thank you again.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Donald is in his elements.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is, let me tell you, this is the first time that he has actually brought notes.
No, we haven't stuck to them at all, because we've just gone all over. I wanted to make sure that we did talk about a couple of things there. But what I really got from there was this sort of, that process that reflection, the self-awareness.
Yeah.
But it's
Yes,
an
that's
active
true.
process.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I really enjoyed what you said there about, answering that question which Roni Watson asked you.
Oh yeah, Rory Robinson.
And how
Yeah.
it's just a pivotal point
Yeah.
in your
yeah.
life that was.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just the fact that you actually went from Sheffield
Yeah.
to Bognor Regis, what,
Regis, bro.
1978, 80,
Yeah,
81?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
those days,
85.
we didn't really go anywhere, did we?
85, 86.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, 85, 86.
Hey,
yeah.
do you know, without cutting you, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's all right.
him being the one who loves cricket.
Yeah.
I met Devin Malcolm.
Oh, Devil,
yesterday.
When
yeah,
are you going to
he
invite
went-
him on?
He went to college with me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I would cause everybody else was cause he's he played everywhere, even
Yeah,
though
yeah,
he
yeah.
grew up, he learned here
He played
at the
for
Caribbean Sports Club.
Caribbean
Derbyshire. He played
Sports,
for
yeah.
Derbyshire.
And then he
Oh,
played
yeah.
for Derbyshire and he played
Yeah,
for
and England. Yeah.
He got
Yeah.
9 wickets against South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think apparently this story goes that actually, I don't know, someone hit him for some runs, and he said, "You're going to pay for that." So next thing, because
The
he was
legend.
fast, though,
He
wasn't
was raw.
Yeah, he was
yeah,
raw.
Yeah, the odd ball might fly over
Anyway,
your head.
yes.
Yeah.
He reminded me a bit
Yeah.
of remember Wayne Daniels.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Wayne
yeah.
Daniels
yeah,
was
yeah,
quick, but
from
he was
Middlesex.
raw as well.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
he didn't have what Andy Roberts had and
No,
what
yeah.
Holden had, which was control.
Yeah, that control.
Yeah, because they were line and length, weren't they?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
ball never
yeah,
went.
yeah.
They was landing the same spot every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because for me it's like I've been trying. That's the question I was in terms of kind of the young. I know. I don't understand anything about cricket, but it's like I'm just still trying to figure out, if it's still as popular as it used to be. Because I remember a time, because we didn't learn at school. When I was finishing school, cricket was just coming to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it was a colonial sport. So.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm trying to figure out, maybe the next conversation will probably kind of get Milton Samuels to come and talk about the different things that are happening in Sheffield, especially around the work that's being done at the pavilion.
Maybe we've got Des Smith. And
Des
Milton.
Smith and Milton Samuels.
Yeah.
It'll be nice to kind of bring him proud for the next time in terms of.
Yeah, and how they've been running the club now
Yeah.
for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And I know when I first came to Sheffield, they just got the site up at
Over in the other
Where
side of
place? Ecclesfield.
Ecclesfield, yeah.
and that's and I know they've got. When I last saw Milton, he was talking about plans for the new
Yeah,
pavilion.
they have the plans. Yeah, they've got plans, and they're still, kind of appealing for support, especially around the time. Which is emblematic of a lot of our projects in the city.
Yeah.
The support and stuff, and which also kind of you alluded to earlier about. I think sometimes there's a conversations in our community that we need to have in terms of kind of for us to either, I won't say flourish, but kind of move on
I would
and
say
become
flourish.
better. Yeah, flourish.
Yeah, I
and
would
become
say
better
flourish.
than we're.
Because we're still bound by the chains.
That's it.
Yeah, we're still bound by the chains and those limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
But now, if we thought it was challenging in our the baby boomers generation and coming through, it's tougher now. It's just as tough now.
Yeah.
And you need to have a focus and know where you're going, and have conversations with people who want the success that you want, because the system isn't geared up for certain people. So you've got to learn an alternative route, and you get that by reading books, speaking to people, like-minded people, and also people who understand financial literacy, what to do with your money.
That's it.
Because one of the things that we all did as in the younger
have spent
generation, we spent it on
We
jewellery.
look good, though.
Yeah, we look good. Yeah. Jewellery.
Let's not joke, man. We look good.
Yeah, we look good. Bling. Sergio Tacchini
Yes.
or Kappa.
Hey,
know,
one time,
yeah,
just saw
gold
Errol
teeth.
came to my
Gold teeth.
workplace.
Got any gold teeth?
So I was working. So Errol came to a meeting
Yeah.
at my workplace. So there I am there in my position as sort of like deputy principal, and we're in the meeting and we're talking, etc. And at the end of the meeting, I said, "Oh, Errol, how are you doing, etc." And I said to him, Where did you get that shirt from?
Yeah,
Because the shirt,
Yeah, 'cause I was
all
gonna ask you,
day, I was
like,
looking at all the meat. I'm just looking at the
Yeah.
shirt, thinking, that's a good shirt, that.
Yeah. I've been in fades before. I was in fades a few years ago, and I had some River Island jeans on, and they cost a lot of money. And somebody said at the time, I said, "Oh, well, look at you. You've got them jeans on and things like that." And I said, I tell them a little bit, well, I've worked hard for it and I made some sacrifices. Before that, I said, "Oh, it's all right for some."
Mm.
He said, "It's all right for some."
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then because they don't know that journey,
Yes.
but it's quick to say it's all right for some because again, those limiting beliefs, those chains that bound us, and in society, and that's one of the reasons why I left Sheffield.
Yeah.
The
But
big
isn't it-
reason why,
I read
the
something
big
the other
reason
day-
why I left Sheffield is because of that generation. There was no hope for people of colour. But when I went to London, you saw black people in banks. It's like, what? We saw black people in white collar jobs and everything.
Yeah.
And it was like, until when I finished school, college, whatever, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking there, something I
Yeah.
read yesterday, and I've heard it in different ways, which was people don't mind. Oh, it's something about those that matter don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
and those that mind don't matter.
Ah.
And it's that sort of thing I'm saying to myself, don't bother yourself about those people who don't matter.
Yeah.
People who don't matter don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Those that matter
Mine.
don't mind,
Yeah.
and those that mind don't
Don't
matter.
matter.
Yeah.
So the ones who matter to you,
Yeah.
they usually don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
True. And the ones that don't matter to you,
Yeah.
they're the ones who mind,
Yeah.
but they don't matter to you. So
Yeah.
they can think
Yeah.
what they want to think.
Indeed, and there's two things that come to mind. There's a great book by Stephen Covey, The Seven Highly Habits of the Seven Successful People, Circle of Concern and Circle of Influence. Don't concern yourself with things that you can't influence. And then a formula, I think it's Jack Cranfield or something like that, E plus R equals O. The E, the event, and saying this scenario, racism, plus R, the R, is our, any idea with what the R stands for?
I've no idea.
Relationship.
Not far off. Our response
Whoa, response.
Oh.
equals the outcome. What are we in control of?
Yeah.
What are we in control of?
Yeah.
But we put an X over it.
Yeah,
lot
but
of
we
people-
spend a lot of
yeah.
time worrying about what other people think,
Yeah,
don't we? And
yeah.
you say, oh, and we've been. I would say this. I mean, we're not recording now, are we?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter.
No, which is the sort of sense of that. When you're growing up.
Yeah.
What people said did matter.
Yeah.
They would talk about you.
Yeah.
And on your business, so you
Yeah.
you got mindful of your own business, didn't
Yeah. But then it was a case of our response, because when I was growing up, you got a choice, haven't you? You can either go to the streets and
hustle.
and hustle and put you, and respond that way,
Yeah.
or you can go to college, go to university, and try to be a bit better than that. So therefore, going back to my mum's analogy, it's a case of it's what's in your head. They can't kind of like take it.
But I tell you, when I was
take it
growing
away.
up, I saw them guys do that, and I was also quite scared of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was scared. Some guys were. I was scared of some guys. Guys
Yeah.
within my own community, the black community. I was scared of
Yeah.
guys outside there, the
Yeah.
racist white guys there.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent a lot of time being scared
Yeah.
when I was young.
Yeah.
I found ways to hide being scared,
Uh-huh.
but I was scared nonetheless.
Yeah.
But isn't it that's how we are dealing? Even the whole concept of hyper masculinity
Yeah.
is fear.
Fear.
Because you try to exude that sense
Yeah.
of I am stronger than I
Yeah.
actually am. So
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's
Unless you're taught, or you're aware of the analogy or the acronym of fear.
Mm.
False evidence appearing real.
Mm.
So again, it plays back to the E plus R equals O. Because a lot of times, our response can either be positive or negative.
Yes.
And if we have that positive mindset, limiting beliefs and all the rest of it, and we continue it unless we stop it.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an episode. Until next time, keep those conversations going and the clippers buzzing.